to this live community event on the Teaching English Facebook page. My name is Marcus James, and today we're going to be hearing from Professor Graham Hall about his research into research. Hi Graham, how are you today?
Hi there, Marcus. Fine, thanks. Thanks for the time and the invitation to be here.
Well, we're glad you came along. Teachers, if you have been following us on social media, you would have noticed that we've been sharing a few summary posts from Graham's research looking at teachers' engagement. So first of all, let us know in the comments, do you read or use research in your teaching? Graham, what does your research say about this?
Well, I think in the field in general, there's a sense quite reasonably that most teachers don't engage with published research very much, and that was the focus of my research. Was to find out whether this impression that do no teachers engage with research? Do teachers engage with research just a little bit? And so on and so forth. And what I found was clearly many teachers, quite reasonably, because it's not part of the job description really, don't read published research, but some do. And some are interested in finding out what's happening in terms of research and its implications for practice. And so what I was interested in is finding out any lessons from what I term these research interested teachers. Were there lessons for researchers themselves and how they might make their research more accessible to teachers? Were there lessons for teacher educators who might mediate and filter research findings for teachers? And were there any interesting points or lessons for teachers themselves, those teachers who think, oh, research isn't for me? What do research interested teachers think of research? Why do they read it? And can other people gain the same kind of insights or find the same sorts of reasons or motivations for reading research? So I found that unlike quite a lot of the discourse in English language teaching, which dismisses the idea that any teachers read research at all, I found that some do, and some found it quite useful, and some people read it far more regularly than we might think. But within that, a big orientation to the implications of published research for practice in the classroom and those sorts of things.
Okay, so in terms of teachers who are following this discussion today, then how obviously a lot of academics, you're one yourself, do research and present findings in publications. Why would teachers sort of spend the time to read over 200 pages or so of these publications?
Yeah, I think that's the great question. I don't think teachers would and perhaps even should. Why would a teacher spend all that time reading a very dense research publication? When I was an English language teacher, I didn't. I think the point that I was trying to get to is to try and find what kind of publications, what format of publications, what kind of summaries of research might be useful for teachers, and that how can those that engage in research access those channels. I don't think that researchers or the field or whoever we want to call ourselves should ask teachers to do more work to try and move towards reading big dense research publications. That's not what my research was about at all, and that's not what I think at all. I think the idea would be, if people are finding out interesting things about how languages are learnt and how languages might be taught, how can those interesting ideas be made accessible for teachers in digestible ways that don't take up too much time and can be built into teachers' existing professional lives? And so that comes down to things like summary articles, publishing for people who engage in research to publish in things like teacher newsletters, in articles of 1,500 words, to cut to the chase, to get to the key points quickly. I mean, this is a different kind. It's not necessarily a formal research article of that kind of 7,000, 10,000 word type that you mentioned, Marcus. And some researchers might not want to do that, and that's fine. Not all research has to be relevant to practice, but for those researchers that think they have implications for practice, they might need to rethink or extend what they do to reach, in a phrase that I don't particularly like, to reach out to teachers, to find ways of communicating with teachers that work for teachers. I don't think we should be asking teachers to make a move to do something significantly different. in ways that they read. I think it's for the field in general, all of us, all communities of practice, teachers, researchers, teacher educators, to find the most efficient and effective, accessible and useful channels to exchange ideas.
Excellent. I like what you said there about making it accessible and choosing the channels. We've been sort of digesting your research as well and sharing it on social media. And what we've found certainly is that sort of bite size, we call micro learning, seems to be a good way to go. There's a comment here from a teacher who's following along, Graham. I'm not sure you can see that, from Kim, who says, hello, it can be quite overwhelming to know where to start, and being able to access free and navigate quality and relevant research.
Thanks for that, Kim. I think that's true, and I think something that came through in the project that I undertook, there was a questionnaire which about 700 teachers responded to, and I engaged with interviews with teachers around the world, and that came through quite strongly. Where to start, how to start, and I think that's where teachers, for me, teachers need to know what they themselves are interested in, and then it's a question of knowing what kind of publications are out there. I think it's a question of not necessarily assuming that all research is this massive statistical, huge data set, 5,000 word set of articles. To start looking at things like teacher association newsletters, to start looking for blogs and things like that, and to focus in and find out who are the key names and who are the people that want to speak to and with teachers who might be looking to make their work more accessible. I think beyond that, there's clearly the question also of access in terms of cost and whether it's free or not. I think there's more freely available resources than people might think. Clearly, events like this and putting things onto social media break things down, as Marcus, you said, into bite-sized chunks. But most people who engage and undertake research do make sort of things available freely on personal websites. Certainly in the UK, we've got an obligation to make most of our papers freely available in pre-publication draft, and you can usually track things down. Similarly, most people like myself, if somebody sent a message and said, could you send us a draft of what you've written, would probably send it back. So I think there's two issues. Firstly, it's how to sort through the vast amount of material that's out there, and I think that probably comes from teachers' own interest themselves. Find out who the names are, what's going on at the moment, find out the various channels that are reasonably open, like social media, like blogs, and then contact people directly, or find out their work's webpage and find out where they store all their pre-drafts, and the material is there. Lots of journals, for example, ELT Journal also make at least one, if not two, papers of every issue freely available. And so those kind of journal websites can be accessed. And then, of course, there's things like Teacher Association newsletters, digests, and things like that, and the British Council's own materials. So I think it's to navigate away from the traditional journal and to find those other things that stem from the writer's work, which are placed elsewhere. But it's a really tricky question.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I was doing research at university myself, trying to find articles, latest publications. There were so many different sources. Some you had to register for, some had a paid subscription model. It's got very complicated, but I think we get to that point where we just get to that wall and just think, I can't be bothered. But
I agree. And I think that takes us quickly back to the first question of I don't think teachers should be asked to or required to try and delve into research journals, because I think there's all sorts of issues of the way those are structured, and also the cost. I think things have to be put through other channels to teachers.
Absolutely. Teachers, if you are a follower of Teaching English, do check out the publications and research section of our website. The address is on your screen, and hopefully Wham, who is moderating, will pop that in the live chat as well. In fact, that is where you can find Graham's research. It's among many publications that we have in the world of English language teaching. So Graham, what going back to your own motivations then? I mean, we're all motivated to conduct our own research, but what was your spark?
Yeah, I think it's the question. I think it's the kind of questions we've touched on, really. So I was an English language teacher, and I ended up working in a university and engaged in research. And I've edited a journal, and obviously I've engaged with quite a lot of research publications over time. And a question that worried me, if you like, was who's reading all this? Who's reading all this material that's being published, and why are they reading it? And if we think of a lot of the discussion in the field, we get sort of some people saying nobody reads it, and some people saying let's build bridges. And I just wanted to dig down into that, because there's an awful lot of stuff out there, and where's it going? Is it useful? Does it have any impact? Does it have any implications? And those sorts of things. And that was the starting point, really. It's just that concern of, well, the sorts of issues we touched on. With all this material, who's actually reading it? And if they're not, then what's the purpose? And there is a purpose for kind of pure research that just does its own thing. It doesn't, as I say, all have to relate to teachers' specific interests. But if there are claims being made that this is important for teachers, then shouldn't we investigate whether that material is reaching teachers?
Absolutely. Good point there, Graham. We've got a few comments coming through now, thick and fast. Let's have a quick look at some of them. This one from Teresa. I find that the research methodology and results are sometimes difficult to get into. You touched on that earlier. There's a lot of academic terminology.
I think this boils down to this idea, doesn't it, of who articles or who publications are written for, and what the author wants the impact to be. Clearly, every profession, whether that's teaching or medicine, or whether that's a research or academic subject, has its own kind of set of terminologies and its own ways of writing. If somebody who's writing within the academic field of second language acquisition wants to write for another researcher, then sure, use the terminology. But I think Teresa's point's quite right. If the researcher wants a teacher to read the article or read about the findings, then something different has to happen. We could have a look at a term, couldn't we? We could find 6 different ways of defining it. That's not useful to teachers who need to find stuff out quickly or want to access things quickly. And so another comment I saw from I forget, I can't quite see the name, is this idea of teachers don't necessarily want to read the 3 pages of research methodology, and I quite agree with that. If research methodology isn't your thing, and you want to get to the practical application of an idea, or the implication of an idea, let's say, then why would you want to spend half an hour wading through research methodology? And this again brings us back to different ways of conveying ideas. I won't bang on about the paper that I wrote for and with the British Council, but there are other ways of conveying information between researchers and teachers, if we want to divide up the field into researchers and teachers, which don't have to have this, there's a page of introduction, there's 2 pages of literature review, there's your methodology. Things can be quicker, because what I found was, quite reasonably and unsurprisingly, teachers want to know what the question is, what's the issue that's being investigated, and what was found out, and then either what's in it for them directly, or what they may wish to think about with regard to their own practice. I'm very much of an idea that I don't think it's researchers' job necessarily to tell teachers what to do. I don't think that's what the purpose of research is. My particular view, I think the purpose of any kind of teacher development, and I include research in that, is to prompt questions and people to think about their own context, and take it forward for themselves. I don't think it's a direct relationship.
It's a comment from Yi Win. I use qualitative research, but I don't know about the
Yeah, I think
quantitative.
that came through very strongly in the report that you've published the link to. That most teachers have a strongish preference for qualitative research, for finding out the impressions of teachers, maybe through interviews and so on and so forth. The idea that there are big statistical analyses of 1,000 items of data, that wasn't what the teachers that I dealt with or I asked said they were interested in. And I myself, I've got some familiarity with quantitative data, and I can kind of read it, but it's not the thing that floats my boat. I think if I put myself in the position of somebody who still reads research for my own practice as a teacher or somebody engaged in the field of ELT, which I very much feel that I am, I like to see what other people are doing, to see if I recognize that and to see if it prompts my practice. And I think qualitative research, you can get insights from other teachers around the world. So the sorts of things that I've done in my own work are to, either through questionnaires or interviews, find out what teachers do and think. And then if teachers do and think something that I haven't done before, I think, oh, right, okay, is that interesting for me? And if they do something that I do and think, I think, oh, good, maybe I'm on the right lines. It's those sorts of things. And I think qualitative data, qualitative research lends itself to that very, very nicely. And I think it's in many ways more interesting and it's more relatable, isn't it? If you haven't got a big research background, I think qualitative data is something it's much more straightforward to get into and get your head around. So I completely agree with that comment.
Absolutely. Actually, raise a good point there. I mean, earlier in this live stream, we did an interactive poll, and the question or the sentence was, I read research and use it to improve my teaching.
Yes.
Now, 78% said yes, and 22% said no. But obviously, those are just numbers.
Yeah.
We kind of knew those, but we want to know, really, for the yeses, what types of research do you read and why? And for the no,
and how do you implement it? Yeah, absolutely. So that's the interesting thing. And I think a really interesting question, as you know, Marcus, as anybody who's had the good fortune or misfortune to read the full report knows, I asked questions which only go so far, because that was the nature of the study I undertook. It was to try and find out what people reported that they were doing and how they reported they were engaging with research, the extent. So we now have an idea that quite a few teachers do read and say it has an impact on them. The next question that would be very interesting to find out, I guess it's a future project for somebody, maybe me, maybe somebody else, is how do teachers take the research they've read and what do they do with it? That how question, it's relatively straightforward to find out that teachers say they do something, and I absolutely think they do something, but what and how and what difference does it make? And that's the next kind of step, I think. And that would be quite qualitative as well. That would be kind of case studies and these sorts of ideas. I can kind of think of an idea of maybe taking a group of teachers, getting them to engage with a particular element of research with regard to a specific classroom practice, and then seeing what happens. Because I don't think, that's my knowledge of the field, I don't think we've got much research which progresses beyond this. Do you engage with research or not? The next question, how? What happens? What do you do? How do you implement that? What does that make you think? And those sorts of questions, that would be really, really interesting to find out. And away from the idea that we should research that, I think that's a question for everybody in the room today. If you read research, okay, then what do you do? How do you implement this? That's a question I'm interested in, but I guess it's a question equally that all practitioners are interested in, because that's ultimately it's kind of sort of topic, isn't it?
Absolutely. So yeah, teachers, do let us know. How do you use research? How do you apply what you took from the findings? A few comments to look at here, Graham. This one from Yanni.
Yeah.
How far the results of one context of research can apply to other contexts where there are lots of variations in many aspects. Of course, we all have different students, different classes, different backgrounds to all the learners in front of us. So how can we really make sure that what the findings from one context can be applied to our own?
So I think the answer, for me, the answer to this question, and I hope it's not too much of a kind of evasive answer, is the idea that research can only offer, it can offer prompts and ideas, and it can offer that kind of shock of recognition of, all right, okay, yes, good, that kind of works where I am, but it also offers something to react against. And as I said earlier, I don't think there's a direct line from here's a publication, here's an idea, go and do it, because of all the things that Jani's just said about the variations between contexts. I think probably at best, a publication, whether that's a research article or something, even in a teacher's newsletter, is a prompt for reflection on practice, which may then be workable and might not. So for example, I think it's quite interesting for teachers to think, what is this idea? Is it possible that it's more effective in my own context? If so, why or why not? Shall I try it? And what happened? I don't really think so. Although I'm interested in teachers reading research, I'm not advocating that research should be directly implemented. I'm really seeing it as a tool for thought and reflection, to be honest, and development. And in that way, teachers can take an idea and maybe navigate and wend it into their practice. Because in the end, it's teachers that they're expert in their own context, isn't it? Because they know their own context better than a researcher who's taken a broader view.
Absolutely. And I'm not sure if you would agree with this, Graham, but a lot of the academics who conduct the research may not be that active in the classroom.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment. And I think the difficulty with talking about the topic is research is such a broad area, isn't it? I mean, there's so many different types of research and so many different focuses and all of these sorts of things. So I do think that as a practitioner, you're always looking to see whether the teacher has some kind of relationship or knowledge with the classroom or the language classroom from a practical orientation. And I guess it boils down to what extent do researchers make claims that they really, really know what's going on, or to what extent do researchers say, do this? And I don't really think that many researchers follow that through, to be honest. I think most people engaged in academic research are far more limited in their claims nowadays. But I do think it's difficult to make blanket generalizations. Some people clearly remain committed to the practitioner experience, and some people don't. And it's okay not to, because, the world of academia is a big field and not everybody makes those claims to have relevance. But I do think claims of relevance have to be relatively limited. And in the end, the relevance can only actually be determined by the teacher, to be honest.
Yeah, of course. A lot of the research that teachers do is very often action research, as they're teaching throughout the term, as Teresita says. I have made the action research and proposal project on reading and critical thinking because there are concerns of the senior high school students here in the Philippines. So obviously a very specific context to Teresita, and obviously being a practicing teacher, you've got access to students, you've got access to your colleagues.
So I think this is a really kind of nice idea to explore. So for somebody engaging action research, presumably as you go through the cycle, identify the issue and then think of possible routes forward and possible actions to implement and then reflect on where do the ideas come from for the possible development. And they can come from one's colleagues, from one's prior experiences. One can ask students and so on and so forth, but also they can come from ideas from elsewhere, which may be from sites like the British Council or maybe from sort of published work. So an action research project is clearly teacher-led, teacher-centered, very practical. But at some point, perhaps in the planning, there may be some contact with ideas from beyond that particular context to bring in, to try, to work through, to reflect on. And that's kind of where I see the connection. That's actually what I see the role of published research and the research done by people working in universities. It's to inform either practice directly or just a little bit of information to feed into the action research cycle that can be then tested out. And I think what's interesting, and I think a debate in the field, is then once an action research project has been completed, where does the knowledge and where does the outcome of that go? Does it stay with that teacher? Does it go across that institution in some kind of localized presentation and workshop? Or can we find ways, maybe the British Council, to write that up in ways that are accessible for other teachers, in ways that aren't the standard 5,000 words, blah, 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 to share the experience? Because I think although we started this discussion in terms of thinking about the academic in the university writing 7,000 words, I think that's quite a narrow vision of what research is and can be. And teacher research is a central part of the field. Probably it's as central as people in universities engage in big research projects. But I think the issue would then be, how can we share that? So I think I suppose I'm sort of moving the conversation from, do teachers engage with research per se, to what ways can we as a profession, either people in universities and people who are teaching in the classroom, or people in the classroom engaging in action research, what channels can we find to communicate with each other, to share possibilities that others can then reflect upon and engage with themselves? And action research is a fabulous practice. Can we then share it beyond the local community so others can see it and think, oh right, okay, yeah, that works for me, or I'll give that a go, or no, that doesn't work? Because even thinking that doesn't work is in some ways a positive development professionally, because then you're thinking why, and as soon as you're thinking why, then you're presumably engaging in some form of professional development.
Absolutely. I've got a good conversation happening in the live chat, Graham. It's quite a lengthy comment here from Maria. If a teacher really loves passing on knowledge, and let's face it, teachers do, we are in the profession because we want to improve people's knowledge, the gut feeling would surely help recognize good and poor information. I believe as for easy access to that research, I do agree that it's not intuitive most times, as we mentioned before. We would all benefit from sharing more generously.
Yes.
And there's another comment that follows on from that. Kim says, yes, it would be great to be able to write up and publish teachers' classroom research in a way where we can
I think that's and I've not been involved in these projects, but there is a lot of work published by the British Council, I believe, about the outcomes of expert teachers who try things in the classrooms. And I think an interesting line for the field, and I use this term in a slightly pompous way, but an interesting thing for people in ELT to consider is new ways of expressing ideas. Can we express ideas more often through graphics? Can we find different ways of writing up which are just 500 words long, which are far more accessible? The idea that we can use different formats to express ideas that people can look at more quickly and get through more quickly and avoid this sort of methodological detail, perhaps. And now some would argue, some in academia might say, well, that's not proper research. But for us as practitioners in the field, I don't think the key question is what is and what isn't research. The key question is, as was put really clearly in that comment and in others, is how can we share ideas? How can we evaluate ideas? How can we see whether ideas that are new to us will or won't be effective in our classroom practice? And that's not necessarily about what research is and isn't. That's about ways of sharing.
Absolutely. It's a very good point. Nice way to sort of wrap things up there at the end. So I think we touched on quite a few sort of common themes throughout this discussion that teachers are obviously, it's resonating with a lot of the teachers here as well. So it's about sharing information, making it easier to access and apply, and just being able to communicate with colleagues.
And there's a lot of comments coming in now. People, this is great, because this event in itself is a sharing. You know, you've been very kind in describing me as a professor who knows this stuff, but look at the comments coming in. This is where the expertise is. We've got Claudio saying post presentations using infographics. We've got Rachna talking about ideas with visuals, all of these sorts of things. And this is just such a great channel for everybody in the profession to share their ideas of how best to move forward. You know, with somebody who works in the university, me just being a prompt, somebody in the corner, scratching the itch, if you like.
Well, thank you so much, Graham, for your insights. Teachers, if you are interested, do check out the link in the description of this video where you can download and read Graham's full report from the Teaching English website. Thank you very much, Graham.
Thank you.
Absolute pleasure.
And thank you.
Teachers, we'll see you very shortly. Bye.
Welcome to Teaching English, the world's largest online community for English language teachers and teacher educators. Here, you'll find a range of helpful resources to support your practice, as well as opportunities to help your career grow, whether you're an English language teacher or a teacher educator. Let's take a look. Join thousands of other teachers in our community to share tips and anecdotes. Watch informative videos and webinars, participate in live panels and Q&As, and learn from other community members. Read our magazine articles and listen to our podcasts, where teachers around the world share their expertise. Find us on our social media platforms to connect with the teaching community and build your professional network. Adapt our library of resources for your primary and secondary classes. Enjoy our live online events for teachers on current ELT themes. We also have webinars for teacher educators. Download handouts with more ideas for your classes, or dip into our extensive bank of recorded teacher development sessions. Showcase your professional development by downloading and sharing your certificate of attendance. Boost your skills and explore new ways of teaching by taking our free online training courses. Core online modules feature a blend of theory, practical teaching suggestions, and case studies. Critical reflection tasks help you adapt the contents of the modules for your teaching context. Find support and share knowledge in the Facebook-based learning community. Engage in developmental discussions while getting the support you need to bring ideas into your classroom. Focus on aspects of your course and get answers to your questions through live events. With links to additional resources, your workbook helps you reflect on the learning process and explore areas of interest. Clarify concepts and access reference material through the extra resource documents. Complete the core modules to earn your British Council certificate. Stay up to date with the latest research and innovations through our library of articles, case studies, and ELT Masters dissertations. Support your academic studies and lifelong learning through our publications, suggested reading, and discussions. Use our resource books to bring fresh ideas into your classroom on topics that include climate, gender equality, creativity, and sustainable development goals. With our continuing professional development frameworks, you can reflect on your teaching and work out exactly what you need. Get inspiration, support, and practical ideas for your professional development and to enhance your career. Join us on your learning journey today.